What's going on, SixPackAbs.com? It's Thomas DeLauer, your lead nutritionist and creator of the science-based six-pack intermittent fasting program, which is down below in the description. Today, I want to give you the lowdown on omega-3s and why it is truly the trifecta when it comes to brain and brawn. We're talking about brain performance, muscle building, and fat loss, and omega-3s have scientific proof to be one of the best ways to improve all three of those things. So first off, what is an omega-3? Just a general summation. Omega-3s are polyunsaturated fatty acids that are particularly found in fish and shellfish and some algal oils, meaning it's coming from algae, but mostly you're gonna get them from good marine sources. You will find them a little bit in some meats that are actually land-based, but it all depends on if they are grass-fed and grass-finished, and it's a little bit more difficult. So your safest bet is getting something from a marine source. But anyway, let's talk about what they actually do when it comes down to the brain. Okay. Polyunsaturated fatty acids, or omega-3s, are extremely beneficial when it comes down to brain function. And it has to do with the fact that they improve neurogenesis in not only kids and not only fetuses, but full-blown adults too. Before, it was thought that neurogenesis was very difficult to occur in adults. It was hard to grow new brain cells, it was hard to encourage brain cells to develop, but recent science is showing that it actually isn't the case. Polyunsaturated fatty acids like omega-3s give you a tremendous boost in cognitive function. And it all has to do with the fact that they help build up the cell membrane a lot more. See, omega-3s end up giving the fluidity and the flexibility to the cells, particularly in the brain. When cells are more flexible, it means that they can move and morph a little bit easier, which means that they can scoot themselves closer to each other, which means that cells can communicate better, which means that signal transduction, which means that communication within the brain is a lot more. And that gives you a lot more cognitive function. What's really interesting is that omega-3s end up making up about 8% of your brain's overall weight. Now, mind you, we have two different kinds of omega-3s that you're going to find. You have Eicosapentaenoic acid and you have docosahexaenoic acid. Eicosapentaenoic acid, also known as EPA, is usually found floating around throughout the body. It's going to help modulate inflammation and does a number of great things there. But it's docosahexaenoic acid, DHA, that predominantly makes up that 8% weight of the brain. And that docosahexaenoic acid can cross through the blood-brain barrier and give your brain a lot more neuroprotection than it would have ordinarily. You see, what ends up happening is because that docosahexaenoic acid and those omega-3s help create the actual shell of a cell, like the membrane, it helps protect that cell from oxidative damage. You see, ordinarily, we have all this oxidative stress and stuff that comes into our body and damages cells and sometimes kills them. But if we have a strong membrane because of high levels of omega-3, we can stop that or slow that process down. Meaning not only do we grow new cells, but we also prevent cells from dying. So thereby giving us a lot more brain benefit. Okay, now let's talk about the muscle side of things for a second. This one's really, really fascinating. I'm going to talk about this entire topic from one particular study. This study was published in the Journal of Clinical Science, and what it did is it took a look at 9 participants that ranged from the ages of 25 to 45. So we're looking at a nice middle-aged group. All of them were sedentary individuals, so a clean baseline to work with. They gave them all 4 grams of EPA and DHA for a total of 8 weeks. And what they wanted to look at was if protein synthesis increased. Well, what they found was pretty interesting. At the end of 8 weeks, they found that if they just consumed omega-3s, there wasn't much of a difference. But if they consumed omega-3s in conjunction with higher levels of plasma amino acids and insulin, there was a huge increase in protein synthesis. Well, what does that mean? Well, amino acids and insulin are going to increase whenever you consume protein. Okay, if you were to have a whey protein shake, you'd end up having a spike in insulin and a spike in amino acids. Okay? What ends up happening here is when combined with omega-3s, you end up having an elevation in protein synthesis. And it works through a very unique thing. It's called the mechanistic target of rapamycin, also known as mTOR. Maybe you've heard of mTOR before, but all it is an indicator of protein anabolism. When mTOR levels are elevated, the body is taking more protein and turning it into muscle. It's synthesizing. It's telling the muscle cells to actually be created. So you're creating new muscle cells and growing them larger. It's pretty powerful. So there is a 50% increase in mTOR activity and mTOR signaling when there was an insulin spike along with omega-3s. Therefore showing that omega-3s have a very powerful effect when it comes down to synthesizing protein. That blew my hair back. That was pretty darn fascinating because we had always been taught in the fitness industry that you don't really want to be combining fats with your proteins or your carbohydrates at all. You usually want to make sure that you're just keeping them separate and that fats have nothing to do with muscle growth outside of testosterone production. So that's exciting there, but let's talk about what can happen in the way of fat loss too. Now, you've probably heard that omega-3s help promote a lean body. Sure, that's fine and dandy. There's a number of reasons, a number of clinical studies that prove that omega-3s help with fat loss. And the main one that you've probably heard is the fact that it satiates you. It's going to help keep you from being hungry all the time. And that makes perfect sense. But the one that I really want to focus on here is one that has to do with brown fat and white fat. And this is a pretty epic study. But before I get into the study, I have to make sure you have an understanding of what brown fat and white fat is. Brown fat is the kind of fat that's in your body that increases your core body temperature. Brown fat is a good fat. It's a fat that if you have more of, your body will actually stay leaner. Okay? White fat is just the fat that hangs out on the body. It's just the adipose tissue. It doesn't have a whole lot of function other than insulating your body. It doesn't thermoregulate. It has low levels of mitochondria, so it doesn't have a high level of blood flow or energy. Okay, well, brown fat is what we want. This study was published in Scientific Reports, and it took a look at two groups. Okay? Both groups consumed a high-fat diet, but one group added omega-3s by way of fish oil, one group did not. Well, what they found is at the end of this study, those that ended up consuming the omega-3s had a higher core body temperature and lower levels of overall body fat. Pretty crazy, right? Well, how did this end up happening? How it ended up happening was the ones that took the omega-3s had a higher level of what's called uncoupling protein 1 in their brown fat. This uncoupling protein 1 is an indicator of thermogenesis, indicator of body temperature going up. So it meant the brown fat was burning hotter. But didn't stop there. They also found that in those that consumed the omega-3s, the white fat even had higher levels of uncoupling protein 1, indicating that the white fat was migrating over and turning into brown fat. So omega-3s can help shift white fat to brown fat, but more importantly, they allow brown fat to burn hotter, which thereby gets your metabolism nice and hot. So we've got brain, we've got some brawn, and we've got some leanness. All in all, the main reasons you need to be consuming those omega-3s. And of course, we have to add the extra benefit of heart health too. That's the one that's widely known. So what the heck? Omega-3s are going to help you live longer, help you be stronger, and help you be smarter. As always, keep it locked in here on this channel on SixPackAbs.com, and I will see you soon.